You know that moment, maybe it's like 11:30 at night and you just find yourself standing right in front of the
Oh,
refrigerator.
yeah. We all know that one.
Right. The door is wide open. That cold light is just spilling out onto the kitchen floor and you're just staring at, I don't know, a piece of leftover cake. Or maybe you're sitting on the couch reaching for your phone to check notifications for like the 100th time.
And you aren't even hungry or looking for any actual
Well,
information.
exactly. You aren't hungry at all, but there is this intense, almost gravitational pull. And usually we're taught that there are really only two ways to handle that kind of pull.
Right. The classic binary trap.
Yeah. Either you white knuckle your way through it, just rigidly suppressing the urge until you're absolutely miserable.
Or you just give in.
Right. You give in, eat the cake, scroll on your phone for an hour, and then you just drown in a puddle of shame. It's terrible.
It really is a trap. We just bounce back and forth between this rigid discipline of suppression and then the humiliating defeat of indulgence. And the problem is, neither of those options actually addresses the underlying engine that's driving that behavior in the first place.
Which is exactly what we're looking at today. Welcome to today's deep dive, where our mission is to explore this incredible text on the radical acceptance of desire.
It's such a fascinating text.
It really is. It completely reframes why we find ourselves staring into that fridge. It offers a radical third option that flips the script entirely.
Yeah, and it connects those mundane, slightly embarrassing habits like desperately needing a third cup of coffee or, obsessing over a text message directly to our deepest spiritual longings.
But to understand how this works, we first have to unlearn what we assume desire actually is,
Yeah.
because we treat it like an enemy to be conquered.
We really do. And the author of the text experienced this firsthand. She talks about being a high schooler in the late 1960s. And when she was introduced to Buddhism in a world studies class, she just completely dismissed it.
Which, I mean, makes perfect sense when you think about that specific era. The 60s were basically built on hedonism as a devotional practice.
Oh, absolutely. People were desire junkies back then.
Yeah. So to a teenager living in that culture, a philosophy preaching detachment sounded incredibly grim. It sounded anti-pleasure, like some instruction manual for how to stop having fun with your friends, stop falling in love, and just strip all the color out of life.
Right. And that is easily the most pervasive misconception about mindfulness and Eastern philosophy in the West.
That it's just about killing your joy.
Exactly. But the Buddha's middle way never framed our wants and needs as the problem. Having a biological or emotional inclination for things, like wanting connection, needing food, desiring physical comfort, that is entirely natural.
So the wanting isn't the issue.
No, the suffering doesn't come from the wanting. The suffering comes from our habit of clinging to those experiences. We demand that these fleeting pleasures become permanent fixtures in our lives.
Because desire itself is, at its core, just biological energy, right?
It's the foundational energy of life. The Dalai Lama often points out that everyone fundamentally wants to be happy and avoid suffering. That drive in itself is a desire.
Well, that makes sense, like Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes, exactly. It maps that progression perfectly, moving from basic biological drives for food and shelter all the way up to complex, profound yearnings for self-realization.
I think there was a quote in the text from the Buddhist scholar Walpola Rahula.
Oh, where he described desire as the greatest force in the world.
Yeah, that's the one. He says it's the energy that joins a sperm and an egg. It's the gravitational pull that holds galaxies together. So denying those needs just leaves us feeling totally fractured. But okay, let's unpack this for a second. If desire is as natural as gravity or breathing, we have to look at when exactly a natural hunger mutates into something that makes us miserable.
Right.
Because breathing doesn't make me feel ashamed. But wanting someone's approval so desperately that I act entirely out of character, that absolutely fills me with shame. So why does this natural energy so often feel like a tyrant holding us hostage?
Well, we feel like hostages because of where we direct that energy when we feel disconnected. And the etymology of the word is really revealing here. The Latin root of the word desire is decidus,
Decidus. Okay.
which translates to away from a star.
Away from a star. Wow, that is incredibly poetic.
It really is. Think of that star as the energetic source of all life,
Yeah.
an expression of pure awareness or our deepest, truest nature. We have this fundamental longing to belong to that star,
But life gets in the way.
right? As we navigate life, we inevitably experience moments of feeling disconnected, isolated, or unloved. And in that feeling of being lost and apart from our source, our survival instinct kind of panics.
It freaks out.
Exactly. It takes this massive, beautiful longing for connection and attaches it to fleeting, temporary things. We shrink our profound spiritual hunger down to fit into these tiny, totally inadequate containers.
So the natural energy of desire gets warped. And the text explains that this warping creates something called the wanting self. It's not just a feeling anymore, it becomes this rigid identity built around our unmet needs.
And this almost always starts in childhood. The text shares this heartbreaking story of a therapy client named Chris to illustrate how this identity
Oh,
forms.
the accordion story.
Yes, Chris grew up in a house where his natural talents were just completely ignored. And there's this one agonizing memory from when he was 5 years old. He was feeling left out while his parents were talking, so he pulled out his new accordion and started playing for them.
Just trying to get a little bit of attention?
Yeah, he was a 5-year-old simply saying, notice me, I exist. But his parents, who were annoyed by the interruption, just told him to go to his room.
That's rough.
It gets worse. When he wouldn't leave, they just walked into their bedroom and shut the door on him. Chris stood in front of that closed door playing his accordion until he finally just curled up on the floor and fell asleep.
Oh, man. It is a devastating image. And psychologically, that closed door just completely rewired his brain.
It created a profound neural and emotional association. His nervous system learned that his natural desire for connection led directly to humiliation and abandonment.
So his brain had to protect him.
Exactly. To protect himself from feeling that agonizing rejection again, his psyche built the wanting self. And as an adult, this manifested as a desperate, lifelong compulsion to be the center of attention.
Right. The text said he would try to show off in spiritual study classes or constantly play his guitar at social gatherings.
Yeah, driven by this terrifying subconscious belief that if he wasn't special and noticed, he was entirely worthless.
So the core of this wanting self is just fear and shame. And when we are operating from that place of fear, we start reaching for substitutes.
We do. If we can't get true connection or love, we use a substitute to prop ourselves up.
Like if I can't feel deeply loved, maybe I can feel powerful by working 80 hours a week. Or if I can't feel understood, maybe I can get a quick dopamine hit from a pint of ice cream.
Yep, those are classic substitutes.
There's that brilliant cartoon mentioned in the text that captures this perfectly. It's two homeless men sitting on a park bench, and one turns to the other and says, I used to have a private jet, a condo in Aspen, and be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Then I switched to decaf.
It's so good. The joke hits home because it exposes the total absurdity of our reliance on these substitutes. A substitute, whether it's caffeine, wealth, overeating, or even like obsessive people-pleasing, it just provides a temporary surge of pleasant sensations.
It temporarily numbs the raw pain of feeling unloved. It's like trying to put out a house fire by, turning off the smoke alarm. It stops the annoying noise, but your house is still burning down.
That is the perfect way to look at it. And the wanting self is incredibly deceptive. It doesn't just hijack our bad habits, it hijacks our meaningful pursuits too.
Oh, right, like the author's own work.
Yeah, she talks about how her own spiritual work, like preparing talks or writing articles of meditation, would suddenly get co-opted. What started as a genuine desire to share knowledge would twist into an anxious strategy to just prove her worth and secure respect.
And when this substitute-seeking behavior really goes into overdrive, it transitions into addictive craving. We develop absolute tunnel vision.
I really do.
The author shares this hilarious but honestly deeply relatable example of this struggle. She calls it the Vipassana romance.
Oh, this story is amazing.
So Vipassana is a form of deep insight meditation where you sit in total silence, sometimes for weeks at a time, just observing your mind. And the author is at one of these week-long midwinter silent retreats. The entire purpose is to be fiercely present.
But instead,
Her mind latched on to this guy she had casually met before the retreat, and she proceeded to construct an intricate, epic romance around him in her head.
while sitting in absolute silence in a freezing meditation hall.
Yes. Externally, she looks like a picture of serene focus. Internally, she is courting the stranger, getting married, hiking the Blue Ridge Mountains, and convincing herself they are absolute soulmates.
It's the wanting self in full swing.
And then comes the inevitable crash, right? The stab of guilt, the frustration and self-loathing for lacking discipline. She tries with all her mental strength to suppress the fantasy, but the harder she pushes it down, the louder it roars back.
Because suppression is the trap we all fall into. When we hate ourselves for our cravings, we are essentially sending cruel messages to our wanting self. Rejecting the desire doesn't make it evaporate. It just hardens our emotional shell.
It just makes us colder.
Right. And the text uses a classic Chinese Zen tale to illustrate the real danger of this rigid discipline. It's about an old woman who had been financially supporting a monk, allowing him to live in a hut on her land for 20 years so he could meditate.
Okay.
And one day, she decides to test his spiritual progress.
Oh, I love this story. She sends this beautiful young girl to deliver his daily meal and instructs the girl to warmly embrace the monk and then report back on his reaction.
Yep. So the girl returns and tells the old woman that the monk stood completely stock still.
Like a statue.
Exactly. So the old woman goes up to the hut and asks the monk what it felt like to have the girl's warm body against his. And the monk proudly replies, like a withering tree on a rock in winter, utterly without warmth.
Which you'd think is the right answer. By almost every conventional standard of religious discipline, the monk thought he passed the test with flying colors. He successfully resisted temptation.
But the old woman's furious. She calls him a fraud, throws him out, and literally burns his meditation hut to the ground.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if giving into our cravings ruins our lives, but successfully suppressing them turns us into a rock in winter, we seem to be completely out of options. Why did she burn the hut down?
She burned it down because the monk mistook deadness for enlightenment.
Wow. Deadness for enlightenment.
He didn't transcend his desires, he just killed his humanity. He disconnected entirely from his tenderness and his capacity to feel. If you reject desire, you're rejecting the very source of your aliveness and your capacity for love.
So the goal isn't to become a block of ice.
Not at all. The goal is to relate to our intense feelings without getting possessed by them and without resisting them.
Which leads us to the absolute core of this deep dive. The alternative to giving in or suppressing is a practice the text calls radical acceptance. And the text actually provides a very specific practical framework for how to achieve this.
Yes, the RAIN framework, R-A-I-N.
We really need to focus on this because understanding RAIN completely changes the game. Let's break down what each part stands for. It's recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture.
Exactly.
And to understand how RAIN breaks the cycle of craving, the text shares an incredibly moving real-world story about a woman named Sarah.
Sarah's story is so powerful.
It is. So Sarah went to a 10-day Buddhist retreat, and she arrived absolutely terrified because she struggled with compulsive overeating. She was obsessing over the retreat's dining hall.
Just consumed by the thought of food.
Yeah. Even her standard coping mechanisms, like taking an assisted pause to call her sponsor before opening the fridge, they just weren't stopping her binges anymore. She was drowning in shame.
Her shame was completely paralyzing her. So during an interview at the retreat, her teacher guided her through the steps of RAIN. Let's look at the first step, the R, recognize.
What does that actually mean in the moment?
It means she had to simply notice and acknowledge that the craving was happening without immediately trying to fix it. Just recognize the presence of the urge, saying, craving is here.
Just labeling it. Okay, Then comes the A, allow, which honestly goes against every instinct we have when we feel a craving.
It really does. Allowing means letting the experience be there without judgment. Instead of fighting the craving or wishing it away, she was instructed to whisper gently to every single feeling that arose. This too.
This too. It's an invitation rather than a rejection.
Right. It's making space for the reality of the moment. Then she moved to I investigate.
And this isn't like an intellectual analysis, right? She's not trying to figure out why she wants to eat.
No, not at all. It's a physical investigation. She was asked to physically feel the jumpiness in her stomach, the tight bands squeezing her chest, the raw fear, the anger. She brought her full, curious attention to the somatic experience of the craving in her body.
Just feeling the physical sensations, which leads to the final and arguably most important step, and nurture. Or as it's sometimes framed in the text, non-identification.
This is where the ultimate breakthrough happened for Sarah.
Because she realized that this endless changing parade of intense thoughts and desires wasn't something she was consciously creating.
Right, she wasn't in some control room flipping switches to make herself crave food.
And in that realization, she heard a voice whisper inside her, "It's not my fault.
Yeah.
It's never been my fault."
Which is such a profound shift.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here. It's not my fault. I can hear the alarm bells going off for people listening. Doesn't that just give us a free pass?
I know, it sounds like an excuse.
It sounds like the ultimate excuse to just say, well, my biology and my childhood made me do it, so I'm just going to eat whatever I want and avoid taking any responsibility.
It's a very natural skepticism, but it misunderstands the psychology at play. It's not my fault. It's not a license to act recklessly. It is a profound acknowledgement of reality that disarms our nervous system.
How so? Let's look at the mechanisms here.
Well, Sarah's craving was born from a massive web of causes she didn't choose. She had a genetic predisposition to addiction. She was bathed in alcohol in utero because of her mother's drinking.
Right.
She had a deeply depressed mother and a critical father, leaving her emotionally starved. Biologically, her brain was wired to grasp at pleasure and avoid pain just to survive.
She didn't sign up for any of those variables. They were just handed to her.
Exactly. And by seeing that reality clearly, which is the non-identification part of RAIN, she dropped the self-blame. And this is crucial because of how shame operates in the brain.
Because shame triggers our fight or flight response.
Yes, when you feel shame, your amygdala panics. Your nervous system feels under attack, and it immediately demands a quick hit of dopamine, like sugar, to self-soothe and regulate.
Oh, wow. So the shame is literally causing the craving.
Exactly. By saying, "It's not my fault," Sarah physically turned off her nervous system's alarm bells. She removed the shame, which was the actual engine driving the addiction.
When she stopped hating herself for the wanting, the biological reactivity chain was broken. And this wasn't just a temporary high from being at a retreat. It fundamentally changed how she operated in the real world.
It did. The text mentions a moment months later.
Yeah, she was up for a major promotion as the head of the English department at her university. And the stress was just mounting. One night after midnight, she finds herself right back in front of the refrigerator, her hand literally on the handle.
The exact scenario we started with.
Right, but this time she uses rain. She recognizes the urge. She pauses. She goes to the kitchen table, sits down, and physically allows the feeling to be there. And she mentally repeats, craving for food and obsessing about the job are not my fault.
And by investigating what was underneath the hunger, without that blinding layer of shame, she found a terrified part of herself that needed nurturing.
She felt an overwhelming terror of failure.
Yes, she felt a deep, vibrating longing to be accepted and valued by her peers. The desire for a late-night snack was just a frantic cover-up for a profound emotional yearning.
So by using the RAIN framework to listen to her body with compassionate presence, she freed herself from the grip of the craving. She didn't eat to numb the terror, she just sat and felt it.
It's incredible what happens when we stop fighting ourselves.
And the text invites us to take this process of sitting with the discomfort one step further. It asks us to fully surrender to the immensity of our longing.
Which can be terrifying.
It is. And to explain what this looks like, the author brings up the story of Milarepa. He was a famous Tibetan yogi who spent years meditating in an isolated mountain cave.
As part of Milarepa's intensive practice, the contents of his mind would physically manifest in the cave as visible projections. His inner demons, his lusts, his fears, his aversions would literally appear in front of him as gorgeous, seductive figures or terrifying monsters.
Just imagine your deepest insecurities physically walking into your room.
Nightmare fuel.
Truly. But instead of fighting them or running away, Milarepa does something incredible. In one instance, the cave is packed with demons. He faces the biggest, most domineering one, and he walks up and literally puts his head directly into the demon's mouth.
He fully surrenders.
Yes. And in that exact moment of non-resistance, the demons vanish. They just dissolve into pure awareness. As the text notes, when the resistance is gone, the demons are gone.
Because the demon is simply the intense, uncomfortable energy of our unmet desires that we are terrified of feeling. When we stop resisting it, it loses its monstrous shape.
Which brings the author's Vipassana romance full circle. Instead of continuing to fight her erotic fantasies as if they were demons destroying her meditation practice, the author decided to put her head in the demon's mouth.
She stopped running.
She stopped running. Late one night in the meditation hall, she just said yes to the massive, heartbreaking ache of longing in her chest. She decided she wanted to die into longing. She invited the feeling to be exactly as huge as it actually was.
And by dropping the habitual resistance, the physical tightening of her body, the mental commentary telling her she was failing, that narrow, fixated romantic fantasy expanded. It blew wide open.
The intense focus on one stranger dissolved into a profound, boundless sense of universal love.
She felt completely connected to everything around her. It echoes the poet Rumi, who asked, "Is it really so that the one I love is everywhere?"
The one I love is everywhere. That is just a stunning realization.
It really is.
The goal of all of this isn't to stop wanting things. It's to stop fixing that immense cosmic energy onto tiny, inadequate substitutes, whether that's a late night snack, a toxic relationship, or the need to be the smartest person in the room.
Longing, when felt fully and without resistance, actually carries us to belonging. It is the compass that navigates us back to the star we've drifted away from.
Desire is not your enemy, it is your life force. The real villains in this story are the shame we attach to our desires and the cheap substitutes we use to temporarily silence them.
And we can dismantle the wanting self, not by going to war with it, but by greeting it with deep, curious compassion.
Exactly. By practicing radical acceptance through the RAIN framework, recognizing the urge, allowing it with a this too, investigating the physical sensation, and nurturing ourselves by remembering it's not my fault, we can actually break the trance.
We can step out of the binary trap.
So we have an actionable challenge for you to test this out. Over the next week, the very next time you feel that urgent, compulsive urge to grab your phone, to eat a cookie when you aren't actually hungry, to send a snappy text just to prove you're right, just pause.
Just give yourself a moment.
Apply the first two steps of RAIN, recognize the urge, and allow it to be there. Don't fight it. Feel the physical agitation in your body. Are your shoulders tight? Is your stomach fluttering? Ask yourself what is actually missing right now, and just listen.
You might still eat the cookie afterward, and that's completely okay. But you'll be doing it with awareness instead of being driven by an invisible alarm system.
And as you experiment with pausing and feeling those underlying currents, consider the broader implications.
Yeah, if our deepest cravings are actually a compass pointing us toward our true needs for connection, safety, and love, how might our entire modern economy, which is fundamentally built on selling us those tiny, inadequate substitutes, change if we all started pausing to feel the underlying longing instead?
That is something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Next time you're standing in front of the open fridge at midnight, bathed in that cold light, remember it's not your fault. You're just looking for your star.